All right, so my podcast this evening is with Robb Weidnaar, and me and Robb have gone way back to high school days, and turns out that I always liked you. I mean, we always got along, played football and stuff like that. It was always fun. We were always pretty rowdy guys anyway, and turns out that both of us end up in wheelchairs when we got older, so that's the way it worked out. And both of us have made the very best out of it as far as what we could do. So Robb is a guy who is deep into race car driving, and I've been out with him a couple times, and it's been, like I said, my word for it was violent. It's violent.
It's pretty violent.
As far as that goes. And, I want you to tell me about how did that even start to become a thing for you? Like, how would we get to race car driving?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, you're one of the few people that have ridden with me, and in the real car. So we'll talk about that later. It's
right.
You understand firsthand what's going on. Well, it wasn't something that as a kid you got posters on the wall. You go to races. When I got hurt, it wasn't like, hey, I want to be a race car driver.
Right.
You focus on other things, and then therapy was a really long time. So as a couple years go by, and I finally got my driver's license, that's like, I won the lotto. I can finally leave the house. And
how long was it? For me, it was a while.
It was 2 years I couldn't drive.
Yeah, it was probably over a year for me.
So
but it was no
that's
driving.
a big, that's a big gap.
Some for me was I was waiting for the car to get done too. Because I'm the big van guy,
yeah.
so there's a lot going on.
So once I started driving on the street, I was like, I think, because I drag raced for a little bit before I got hurt. I'm like, I think I can, it's going straight. How hard can it be?
Yeah,
right. So that's kind of how I got my toe back in the water, was drag racing.
Now, wait, I never thought I've ever asked you, like, your accident was in a car, right?
I was in a car, yeah. So
right.
I crashed a rental car with my wife, and she walked away, and I didn't.
No, nothing with her, just not a scratch, huh?
Well, she had like a small fracture, I think C3.
Oh, really?
Didn't affect her cord, though.
Oh, that's nice. That's
yeah.
good, yeah.
So I had, so I was hurt out of state, and the surgeon that put me back together, he volunteers 1 weekend a month at the hospital they brought me to. And,
okay.
And Dr. Bergey's the one that saved my hand.
So now so where are you? Where's your...
I'm a C6, C7.
Right. So it's pretty much similar to me, C6, C7.
Right,
yeah.
and even though our injuries are close to one another, our return is
absolutely different. Yeah. And I mean, everybody with that stuff, everybody's super different. I was in there with a guy that was like a C6 or something like that, and he got almost everything back. Like, it was mostly due to swelling that his...
I've seen people like where they could stand up. I mean, they can't walk, but it's like I saw that, and I'm like, oh, yeah. So the hard part is being chest down, so no abs.
No torso control. Right.
Yeah, so I road race is the racing that I do.
Yeah.
And when I started, well, let me start back.
Yeah.
I had a friend who had a spot on a trailer, and they were going down to Florida in the winter, and they said, hey, you should come down to this it's Dr. Chin. It has this Chin Motorsports. He rents racetracks.
Okay.
And he brings in drivers, and you pay a fee, and then they teach you how to drive on a road course. So I was like, well, I've never been on a road course before. So
right. So this is the guy who he rents them for.
He rents it from like Daytona or all the big tracks. He's pretty much huge now.
Okay.
But back in the day, he bought a sports car. He didn't know how to drive it. He was looking around how to get on track. And he rented a racetrack and got some drivers, and a company was born. I think he's like an anesthesiologist out of Orlando or something.
Okay.
So he didn't know how to drive. So he started this company, and so I went down there. It was a 2-day class. It was at Homestead, Florida, and I shipped my street car down there. And so there was 35 instructors, and no one would get in the car with me. They called it the trifecta of death. I was in a high horsepower street car, never been on a road course, and I'm driving with my hands. Mm-hmm. So one brave soul, Chris Weaver from Fort Lauderdale, thank you, Chris. Chris got in a car with me. It's 5 half-hour sessions a day for 2 days. So first session, terrible. Okay, I think guys in general think because they're a guy, they have to know how to drive and they have to be fast.
Yeah, right.
So I'm out there, and I didn't know squat about road racing. And so, yeah, we come in. We had a big powwow, him and I. And we're mic'd up, so I can hear him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we had a few hiccups out there. I was not driving with my legs strapped. So we found out the hard way with my leg flopping behind the brake pedal.
Yeah, right.
And we survived.
Yeah, you showed me the figure four setup to...
that really works.
No, it works just fine.
It works.
Right.
So I came in, we strapped my leg to the door, made a couple other adjustments, because as you know, your torso as you're turning you're at the mercy of the seat. Like, it doesn't hold you.
I'm at the mercy of that. I'm at the mercy of any spasm I might get too.
See, so I don't have any spasms.
If I turn real hard, sometimes I can get one. Or if I stretch or something like that, I can get a whole thing that goes on.
Fortunately, my spasms are just in the morning and at night. When I'm in the car, I rarely have spasms.
Okay, yeah. If I'm most of my driving's pretty domestic, and I'm driving. But I mean, I drove. It's like 14 hours from here to Lake Vermilion. Ooh. You know what I mean? And then I would say about halfway through that, like my legs are bouncing and everything else. Like, well, it's like time to take a break, man. Get out and move around a little bit.
That's a long way.
Right.
So there's other cars on track. I'm driving around, and when I got done, I had a professional was out on track behind me, and he really liked what I was doing out there. He didn't realize I was hurt as bad as I was. He's like, you should really keep going. And Weaver, Chris, who was instructing me when we got done with the 2 days, he said he worked for PCA, instructing them, Porsche Club America, and he's like, I've been doing this 12 years. No one's improved every day for both days on all the sessions. So
right. Now, is he dealing? He's not just dealing with guys in wheelchairs.
Nobody.
No?
He's never had a guy.
Never got right. That's okay.
Yeah, there's very few people that.
Yeah, no, I would not think. Right, no.
And so, it's important to understand the setup. You drove my car. That car that we were on track with, that you drove, the blue one. That's how I started. So left hand was push to brake, twist to go.
Right.
My right hand did the steering, and I slip steered. So I would turn the wheel, let go, and re-grip.
Yeah, right.
I didn't use the knob.
Sure.
Okay. So fast forward a little. I did a bunch of track days. I flew Chris into Chicago a couple times, and as my ability increased, so does your speed and the safety factor. So I'm driving a street car. I had a better seat at that time, and so eventually I told my wife, I'm like, we need something safe. We need to build a race car.
Right.
So I built a Corvette. So it had a cage. It had a seat specifically made for me, and I drove that car for 2 years and made a lot of horsepower. And I just got to the point where I felt like I could go a little bit faster, and so I researched and bumped around and came up to a place called Eurosport in Joliet, and George, he had a car for sale that wasn't built all the way. It was a Cayman, and that PDK, the automatic, is what I needed, something so I didn't have to keep shifting.
Right.
And they're the ones that really helped me get over the hump, in terms of, okay, now I don't have to shift, I can just drive. Right. So that car.
Now, I mean, for me, like a guy on the outside, to describe the way that the car is set up, I mean, oh my gosh, you are in a seat that holds you exactly. You're like when the original bucket seat, that's where this comes from. You're like in a bucket. You are in like a hole that you're totally like this thing's. The seat's wrapped around you just about, and then you've got what, a 5.6. Six. Yeah, what is it? It's a one between the legs, two around.
Two between and then two over the hips and two over the shoulders.
Right. Okay.
And then I used to have one that was just a strap for my chest, but I didn't really. Doesn't really. I thought it would do more, and it didn't.
No, the ones over the top are totally.
Yeah. So that seat has been designed specifically for my fire suit and my body, and there's not much.
No.
So there's like
right
around my stomach on the sides, and then the shoulders are really snug.
Yeah.
So
right.
I'm not going anywhere in that seat.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been to a couple of NASCAR races and the Busch car stuff and stuff like that. This is nothing like that at all.
Yeah, it's a whole different animal.
I would say it's a, and I don't want to poo-poo anything, and people like to watch the NASCAR stuff, but oh my God.
It takes a lot of skill to drive NASCAR.
I'm sure, but what you're doing is way more active. I mean, I don't even know what I would call the shape of that track we were on, but it was all over we were making lefts and rights, and I mean, everything was apex and everything else, and it was, it was street racing, for sure, but it was, or what exactly do they call it?
Road course. We're on a road course. Right. So there's left, there's right, there's up, there's down. So elevation plays a part into, if you're going uphill, you can brake a little later because the hill is scrubbing your speed. There's things you don't think of.
Right.
So I'm fortunate enough to belong to a track called Audubon Country Club in Joliet.
Fortunately, I had that close too, because when we talked, there's not that many of those out there.
No, there's New York has one, Texas has one, Thermal's out in Palm Springs, and I think there's another one in Vegas.
Right.
So ours, it's right in our backyard, and so I did a bunch of track days, and then I got to the point where on a track day you pay, whatever the fee is, and I have to feel perfect that day to go out and drive.
Sure.
Well, guess what? It doesn't always work that way being spinal cord.
Right.
Like we all got bad days. And
yep.
So I'm like, I think I want to join. Then I can just go out on a Tuesday and practice. And that's what I did. So I joined, and so I've progressed to this car now where even the hand controls, we upgraded the controls a couple years ago. And
sure.
Once I went to the ring,
right.
It was a whole that leveled the playing field for me.
Sure. So I know you gave them to me when we were out there, but what's the specs on the car? How many horsepower is and what is the car? I mean, just tell me all about it.
Yeah. So at the time we built this car, Porsche didn't make anything other than the Cup car. So the 911 was their factory race car. So we built a Cayman, which is like the mid-engine Porsche with a smaller engine, a 3.4 liter, with headers and a tune. We make 340 horse. Car weighs just a little bit over 3,000 pounds, 32 something with me in it. Mm-hmm. And I started on what's called DOT tires. So a Hoosier, it was a R6 back then, but they weren't full slicks. They actually had some groove.
Okay.
And you could get a lot more heat cycles out of them.
Right.
So as I progressed, then I went, the big step was going from street tire to the Hoosier, because there's a lot more grip, and then I went to a slick, which is a whole different animal.
Yeah, right.
And so it's a full race car that we
yeah.
It's got a full cage.
Oh yeah, right.
Fire suppression.
Huge bars in there. I mean, even I saw the helmet you had on. You had what's the thing that's on the back to stop you from the Dale Earnhardt Jr. setup, right? Junior, senior.
So I wear a Hans.
Hans, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's I wear a Hans, and I have a helmet blower for the top of my helmet.
Right.
And because I don't sweat. See, that's
right.
An amputee, they got everything except the limb, whereas a spinal cord.
Yeah, I mean, and some of that stuff we should talk about too, because people just don't. For me, and I don't know how you are with it, I would rather someone, no one's got time, but if you want to know about what's going on as far as the injury stuff goes with me, first off, I have no cognitive problems, that I know of. Yeah. But I had someone the one time asked me if I do the Special Olympics. I'm like, well, no, that's for, mentally handicapped people. That's not for people that are in wheelchairs. You're talking about the Paralympics, right, which is a totally different thing. But I'm considered, and I don't know how you work it either, because your hands are functional, but you have some loss of strength in them or something.
Yeah, so my ring finger and my pinky finger on both hands are not so good.
Right, okay.
And the sense of touch is muted.
Sure. Okay.
So when I'm holding the steering wheel, even with my fire gloves, I can feel the steering wheel, but it's not the greatest.
Right. So I'm considered a quad.
As am I.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
so, which people that confuses people because they think that you're supposed to be a person that can't move anything.
Right.
But quad just means all four limbs are affected. Mm-hmm. So there's people playing quad rugby that the guy's missing one little muscle in his shoulder and he's a quad, which however it works for him. But anyone that has all four limbs affected is a quadriplegic, and I'm not sure where the sensor is, but I know it's below both of our injuries to sweat. So it could be 98 degrees outside, and unless I'm in pain or in shock or something like that, I'm not sweating.
Yeah. See, I was hoping that above my injury I would sweat, so like from my chest up, and it just never materialized,
right.
unfortunately.
Me either.
Well, in road racing, fire is a danger, so you have to wear the proper equipment. So I wear shoes and I wear a fire suit, and so it's like basically wearing a snowmobile suit. So I picked like the worst hobby in the world for a spinal cord. I don't sweat, and I have to wear this. So I wear a suit that's underneath my fire suit that helps cool my body.
Right. Now the day we went out, you weren't working that day.
I wasn't. It wasn't hot enough.
No,
but
right.
it gets.
Oh, it was still
warm from the car.
What was it that day? Like 78 or 76 or something like that. It was not really warm. But I'll tell you what. After we got done, oh man, I was looking to get that helmet off of me because it was.
I bet you it was close to 95 or 100 in the cockpit when we're done.
Well, that's the other thing. The car is. So they've got the cage in there and everything else, and the car is stripped out. Like everything is the door. You can put your hand in the door, everything else, and man, don't let him up there. The heat from the engine,
which is right behind you.
Yes, it starts to get like really, really warm.
And the brakes, you don't realize.
Oh, and the brakes too. I think that some of that I was even feeling the heat from the brakes.
The brakes are
right. So. It does. It gets smoking hot in there, and then that helmet you got on with all the padding, it's not letting any heat out. And yours has got a blower in there, but it was warm to say the least. I was like, hey man,
I
never pulled in here, but I gotta get this helmet off me now.
I have to say though, I've had my share of passengers, and you hung in there full tilt.
And I think you pulled a pretty good lap. You said one of the best laps you pulled with a passenger.
Yeah, we ran like a low 132 on the South track, which is for that car is pretty good.
Yeah, it was, and I mean to describe it, like I said, it was violent, and it was just hardcore acceleration and then hardcore braking. So the 6-piece harness, the 6-point harness thing, you're either with no torso, you're either being caught in it or you're being pushed back into the seat super hard.
Well, you're under the gun for the clock, so it's either on the gas or on the brake.
Yeah, and then we're turning too. And it's like the one time, like I was trying to I got a helmet on, so I'm trying to look around to see what's going on. And the one time I leaned just a little bit, and then you went into a turn. I was like, I'm not going to get my head back until we can come out of this turn. So yeah, my head was like, on a merry-go-round going round and round.
You did great.
But it was awesome. It was hardcore going. How long is the bigger straightaway there? The one we got the most speed up. It's not very long.
It's not very long. It's. Shoot, I guess I should know the length of it.
I did. I thought maybe you did.
I don't know off the top of my head.
It's not very long. I mean, I get into seconds.
I get into fourth gear. That's all I can
say. Right.
Say.
It was like 118, 119 just on that little thing, and I'm like, good golly, it was impressive to say the least. And then I was trying to pay attention to what you were doing over there, and there's a whole lot going on as far as this. I mean, and then you're looking at. Everything that's good, you had the electronic setup that was giving you the speed and I don't know what else is on there, but
that setup, the Multec that you're referring to, records a bunch of stuff. So when I get done, I can plug my computer in and I can pull out stuff.
Right.
So when I first started, you got an instructor sitting with you, and he's telling you, okay, brake here, turn there, go, or slow down.
Yeah, right.
Go too fast. I think one of the things that you learned from when you were driving and I rode with you is you kept trying to get on the gas and turn at the same time.
Yep.
And didn't realize that you're kind of fighting. You're trying to go left and then the car's going right because you're on the gas.
Right.
So there was a long period of time where everything was instructor telling me what to do. And then as I finally got better, I went to a system where I didn't need the instructor with me. I needed the instructor to decipher the data.
Right.
Where am I braking? How hard am I braking?
Sure.
Am I braking late or am I braking too late? So all that stuff gets recorded, and I work with a pro, Tony Kester.
Yeah, right.
And Tony and I have been working together for like 5 years.
Yeah, he seems like, I've met more than a couple of times. Hell of a nice guy. You know what I mean? Probably nice to hang out with.
he's raced everywhere from
Right.
24. He raced prototypes at Le Mans, 24 hours Daytona, 12 hours Sebring, you name it. He's raced all over. But he gets in that passenger seat and he tries to understand, like, okay, I'm only driving with my hands. So
Yeah.
he understands my limitations, and I think he tries to coach me from what I can do, not so much what I can't do.
Right. Which, I mean, I couldn't stress more that it's not just you getting in a car and driving fast. There is so much going on as far as the line you're taking, and then like you were, so the day that I went out with you, I'm going to explain it to people who were listening. We went out first for, I don't even know how many laps we did, but we did a bunch. I mean, it was a good go. I think you said you went through like 8 gallons of gas or something like that.
I think we did 12 laps, which is pretty good for a passenger, I got to say. You hung in there.
Right. Well, what you call it? We did the 12 laps, and it was like the first couple you're warming up the tires.
The brakes have to come up temperature. The tires have to come up temperature.
Right. There's so much going on that's not like, that seems like a thing that somebody could just go out there, and I'm sure there's guys that make millions of dollars a year that are arrogant enough that they just are like, I know what the hell I'm doing, and they go. And it seems like it could be terribly dangerous.
But you can still crash. They can go.
Right. We were out there, a guy spun out.
Yes.
Right. And so a couple laps where we warmed up the tires, and then, oh man, the difference in when you...
I told you, it's like a frog getting boiled. Like, it's going to seem easy at first.
Right.
But once I'm up the temperature, then you're just the braking. That car has a pretty sophisticated anti-lock braking system. So, and then once you get comfortable, the car has downforce as well too. So that's probably important to say. There's a pretty substantial rear
Yeah, so when the wind's coming off of it, it's pushing it down.
It's pushing it down. So
Sure.
during the turns, I have quite a bit of downforce.
Right.
I have 3-way shocks. JRZ, I'll give you a shout out there. So it can control the shock in both directions.
Okay.
And the rated. So
Right.
I can go over stuff, over bumps. We went over some curbing, and it's pretty smooth.
Yeah, no, it wasn't bad.
It's not what you would think.
It was not what I would think at all. It definitely was. If you're somebody who has any motion sickness at all, just forget it. Don't
screwed.
even go.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's hard. It was like, I don't know how to, like,
You'll be ruined for...
if you were in a
half
fight and then the guy was a good fighter and it was going to be rough, like, that's what was going on. It was like, holy shit, we're all over the damn. I mean, it was hardcore.
Well,
for sure.
not having... So being paralyzed from the chest down, so when you witnessed how hard that car can brake. It's hard because, like, my stomach... I can't like tense up and like brace myself.
Yes,
so
right.
It makes it really hard. So when you say it's violent, it's really violent for a quad because I can't.
And it's worse for you than the passenger
Yeah.
because the passenger, all I'm doing is really, I'm just keeping myself, like, I got my arm locked into the cage on the one side and I got my hand posted on my knee on the other side, and I'm holding myself from going places. You got to drive. You're like steering the bugger. I mean,
Yeah.
And the sound, and I mean, it is like, I think, so we brought my boys with, and they were both like, the first couple times we saw a couple cars just come by and like, just headed out to the track, they were like, really? And I'm like, yeah, like, straight up like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like,
Yeah,
it was
some pretty
big.
wicked stuff.
Yes.
So as I got better and better with doing track days, where I've finally, what I felt, maybe learned the line of where I needed to be on track.
Right.
So then I went through the race school at the track and got my license to actually get a competition license. So at the track, there's different run groups for different types of cars and different abilities. So you don't have someone who's really good out there with someone who's
Sure.
just learning.
Sure.
And they're really strict about passing. So like there's no passing in a turn. So in a race, you can pass wherever you want.
Yeah, right.
So, but at our club, you can only pass in a turn if it's a race or a qualifying. So I'm like, you know what? I need to get this license and find out what wheel-to-wheel racing is all about. And,
Now, those guys, when you're in a race, are they bumping and everything too?
oh, well, I mean, there's been some contact. Inspect Miata, which is our most popular,
Yeah.
there's definitely contact.
Yeah, my sons were blown away by my one boy's like, $11,000. I got to get a Miata. Because, like, you were explaining, like, how, it's really not about, like, the horsepower or anything. It's all about, like, the skill when it comes to that Miata.
I think any young driver or any person who wants to learn how to road race needs to start in that car.
Yeah.
There's no ABS. There's no power steering. It's like, it's just a raw seat of the pants. You learn how to drive a car.
Sure.
What I'm driving is completely different. I have mega downforce, mega anti-lock brake system. To a set of a complete brake job on the Miata race car is like $250. Like my rotors are like $1,000 up front. It's like,
right.
It's a whole different animal. The car's just more capable in every regard.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. The Miata doesn't even look like. Now, does anybody take the Miata thing like more seriously than they should? Be like, putting a really, really expensive Miata out there and trying to beat everybody?
Absolutely. So in spec Miata, it's spec. You all have to have.
Yeah.
This year has to have. So you can't really play around. But in GT, what I race, we have 5 levels. So they all race out at the same time. So 1 is our slowest and 5 is our fastest. In real life, GT1 is fastest and 2 is a little slower and 3. So the GT1s are, it all goes to power to weight, and that's where the Miata kind of fits in, is that GT1. And there's definitely an arms race.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we're talking superchargers, wings, crazy brakes.
Right.
Really
so there, in every one of them, like even the one you race in, there's a parameter. Because you were saying like you had won the Cup for the year, what was it, 2 years ago?
I won GT2 2 years ago. Yeah, for the club.
Right.
So.
But then now you've bumped up to.
Yeah. So we had some. So last year was a disaster. I heard a couple engines, and we just couldn't repeat. So over the winter, I put a 911 engine in the Cayman. So a couple years ago, Porsche finally released a race car Cayman called the Club Sport, which was a 911 engine with an automatic.
Yeah.
So essentially, that's what I built, is a Club Sport, and it bumped me up 2 classes because it makes over 400 horse, and it's just wicked fast.
Now 0 to 60, what's going on there?
That's a good question. I've never actually timed it. I would say it's definitely under 3 seconds.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's really quick because the car doesn't weigh much.
Yeah. No, it was.
The gearing is.
It set you back in the seat for sure. As far as and I don't think that we can feel it the same way that somebody else could. You know what I mean? I mean, I was in a couple of Corvettes that were pretty quick when I was a kid, and man, I was surprised with the power they had. I could feel it more, but it was something for sure. So they bumped it. Now, I mean, for you, it's just the learning curve. You just give it some more time, and sooner or later you'll be, getting on top of that class as far as it goes. Or hopefully that's the plan,
I hope so.
right?
Yeah, it's been a wet spring, so my testing has been diluted. Because the problem is that we get rain. Let's say it rains, and then a couple days go by, and then it rains again. The track will weep, so there'll be a couple cracks in key spots that you just can't brake the same.
And this weather's been crazy.
And
this year.
But I drove over the weekend, and I'm not quite where I need to be, but the car's a lot faster, so I have to learn where to brake. And
right. Now, I rode with you before the car was this fast, and I mean, it was a while ago. It was a couple of years ago that I rode with you the first time, and then this time, I'm telling you, I don't know if I could probably gauge it that way because it's so far apart, but it felt faster to me. Yes.
Yeah.
And you said it was like 60 horsepower different or 80?
Yeah, it's 60 more,
60
which is
right.
Pretty significant when you're talking. I didn't change the weight, so.
Right. Does that change now? Just the horsepower? Because I know that's not like the ALBL. Like sometimes it's torque and stuff like that makes the gear, the way it's geared out, or because I mean you're not shifting, are you?
No, well, I used to do an up and a down button on the steering wheel.
Yeah, like a paddle shifter kind of a thing?
Yeah, but with a button instead of a paddle. When we looked at the data, so I did, 20 laps with me using the buttons, and then I did 20 laps with the computer shifting. And there was virtually, I wasn't, my shifting wasn't
getting anything out of it.
Wasn't doing anything that the computer couldn't do. So I leave it in Sport Plus. And the engine's very intuitive to know when to downshift and when to upshift. Now, I do have the downshift button on my brake lever because sometimes when I come out of a turn and I go to hit the gas, I carried so much speed that the computer leaves it in the taller gear, so it's kind of flat coming out. So I can quickly hit that button and downshift.
Yeah, sure.
That's all I have right now.
Okay.
That's all I utilize.
And so now your other vehicle, I drove your street vehicle.
You did.
In a touring setup. So there was like a pace car in front of me, but they still let you get a pretty good brake on the turn, and then you
were
hit the
squealing
gas.
tires.
Yeah,
You
right.
were
It was
squealing tires.
it was super fun. So then I was driving a what? Like what give me the specs on what your vehicle is that
Oh,
you're
you
driving.
drove a 911 Turbo.
Right, okay. Right.
All-wheel drive. That car makes like 550 horse.
Yeah, right, okay.
That's got all the goodies.
Oh yeah, it was super nice.
It's
I
not
mean,
stock.
Cup holders and everything.
Well, my race car, I left the
Yeah,
cup holders. Yeah, I
right.
showed you still the water bottle.
Yeah, exactly. No, it was terrific. And at least, I mean, that one you could throw the air conditioning on. We were super cool and no helmets and stuff, so it worked out nice. But it was cool to...
Well, you got to see the line. You drove.
Yes, right.
You drove on the track. So you want me to like?
Yeah, exactly.
So the track is X amount of feet wide. So where you're on the track makes all the difference.
Oh yeah.
If you're over just a couple of feet.
Right.
So the physics of where physically you're on the track. So once you learn, and I think you got to see that. Like
I think you kind of let me do what I wanted to do on the first lap or so, and then you started to correct me, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so much better what you're telling me to do than what I was doing. You know what I mean?
You don't have to move the wheel as much either. When you're in the right spot.
Yeah, right. I was oversteering for sure, and then definitely, even at the end there, I'm like, man, I'm fighting this whole thing where I want to. There's the turn. I want to turn. But I don't need to turn yet. Like, I needed to wait.
So yeah, it's late apex. You were so early, and everyone is.
Right.
Any beginner that's out there, when they drive, they want to turn.
Yeah, I want to get close to that turn. And then, way outside.
And did it feel weird when I grabbed the steering wheel and they make you wait?
Yeah, right.
You didn't fight me, but I've had some people where when I reach over and grab the wheel, they want to turn.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, whoa, we got a couple seconds here before we can turn. And I'm holding the wheel, and they're fighting.
No, I wanted to figure it out. Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, I know there's a whole, that's like for sure a skill game. It's not. I think people think like race car driving is like the car is the whole thing, but
a good car helps, obviously.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
I think knowing where to be on track and where to brake and where to turn, and then applying that is, there's definitely, I don't know, that's what I found fascinating about it. And I didn't set out to be like, I'm hurt and I want to be a race car driver. Like, it just kind of, it came the other way to me. I went out and,
I saw it firsthand. I mean, I'm with follow you like on social media, and you're absolutely relaying it from what people would see from the outside. You were a guy that you were boating, you were skiing, you did all kinds of stuff, and you fell into this as something that you really, really found a niche in as far as what you were doing. So it wasn't like, I got some dough, I'm just going to pay to be this guy that I want to be.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have done anything you wanted to do, and this is what you end up doing.
I had some really good drivers kind of steer me in the right direction. Like, hey, you need to keep going at this, and it's an incredible feeling when racing competitively with other cars on track. Like, you have a responsibility not to wreck them or wreck yourself, and being in close proximity with other fast cars in that first turn when the green flag drops is, I think that's, I don't know if you ever seen any movies where drivers are like throwing up before they get in the car. Like, I don't throw up, but I feel sick because the pressure of that first, we're all stacked 2x2 and the green flag,
and then you got to have an iron stomach for that anyway, because good lord, I mean, like I said, I've met a couple people that get a little bit of motion sickness just driving in their car. Like, I'm in the passenger seat thinking, this guy's trying to make me throw up, but you're not. You're just totally trying to be faster.
I was trying to be fast. I wasn't trying to make you throw up.
No, but
I do tell people, if they're going to throw up, don't try and go out the window because it'll blow back on you. You got to throw up in your lap. It's because you're belted in so tight.
Right.
That's it's when you came. We'll go back to violent. When you try to describe it. When my very first time on track in the blue car, street car, and the instructor was like trying to like tell me threshold braking, like brake as hard as I can, and I'm like, I was hitting the brake what I felt was pretty hard. So we came around the next lap, and in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to show this guy what braking's all about, right?
Right.
And I hit the brake, what I felt was as hard as possible, and he's like, oh, that's much better. So now...
I'm telling you, he's braking like you're trying to hit a toddler in front of the car. It's seriously, I felt like we were like avoiding an accident every turn. Like it was like, just stopping that bugger and then hitting that thing. It's I got a Subaru that I drive, and it's got the thing on there that like gauges your miles per gallon sort of a deal. And I'm always trying to like nudge that bugger up to get like better gas mileage. It is the complete opposite of trying to get better gas mileage.
Well, I actually have, so the Motec, the thing you were talking about earlier, the dash, it actually has in the program, there's lights. I don't know if you saw like the lights for like when I'm shifting.
Yes.
So those lights, if there's a warning, we'll stop doing the lights, and it'll flash these little red lights in the corners.
Okay.
So every time we were going into the braking zone hard, it says on the screen high ABS. So it's warning me that I'm reaching a certain PSI of brake pressure. So to give you an example, what an average, a driver that's equivalent to able-bodied driver, equivalent, same kind of car as me. There's guys I race against that have almost the same setup as me, minus the controls. Their foot pressure is 1,400 PSI.
Okay, all right.
Okay, that's a lot on the pedal.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I'm doing the exact same amount of pressure with my on the brake with my hand.
Right.
Now the old system, I wasn't even coming close.
Right.
Like what you drove with the left hand and push the brake. Yeah, so when I switched to the bar on the right-hand side, it's kind of curved and it fits more in my palm. I'm right-handed, and my tricep is good.
Yeah,
I can brake just as hard as an able-bodied driver.
Right. Now, see, I felt like, okay, I got that Subaru, and it's got the 3.6 liter motor in there, and it's quick. I pulled up in Orland, headed like a Sunday morning. There's no one on the road. It was like 6 a.m, and there's a guy in a Lexus, and he wants to race me.
He wants to go. Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, fine. So we go. And I mean, I'm in Orland, like right in front of the movie theater. And between the movie theater light and 159th Street, I'm going 105 miles an hour, right? In there. And I beat the guy to the line. So we get to the 159th Street, and he's like looking at me, and he's like, wow, again. And I'm like, all right, fine. So, but the thing that like I think I had advantage over him was, well, some of it was, I guess, my reflexes are a little faster than his because he was not off the line very quick. But like when that light changed, my controls go from like I'm pushing and up to straight down and I'm gas. So like if you're driving with your feet, you're going from one pedal to the other pedal. I only got one pedal. Well, it's like almost like a switch. It goes from one side to the other side.
I'll agree with you there, but some drivers actually use their left foot breakers.
Sure.
So that kind of leads into like some of the tricks for road racing where they got their left foot on the brake, so they're using the gas and then they're coming off the gas and their foot's right on the brake with their left foot, gas on the right foot. I'm kind of like that with my right hand's on the brake and my ring is in the center, so I can kind of mimic what they're doing.
Right.
But they have the advantage.
Oh no, I can't. Right, I'm not saying at all that somehow we have some advantage because this guy's able-bodied, and I don't know how much of racing you can explain it. Used to snowboard before my injury, right? And snowboard.
Were you goofy or regular?
No, regular. Okay, regular. So, but the snowboard it's real wild. Like we were always looking, we were jumping stuff, but we were racing most of the time. So there'd be like 5 or 6 of us in a line, and you're trying to get as tucked as you can to cut as much wind as you can. And like back then, I had like a handheld GPS in my pocket, like trying to tell me how fast I was going and stuff, so I could look at that later to see my top speed.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not the biggest guy out there, like weight-wise and everything else, so I didn't, know. And I think our boards were similar in length and everything. But snowboard is, if you catch even a little bit of edge, you slow down. If you lay that thing flat, totally flat on the snow and ice, you fly down the damn hill. But you're chancing catching the wrong edge and you're going to wipe, right? So like every time you lay that thing totally flat, you're risking it. You really, really, you know what I mean? Like, so like when I was racing the guy in the Lexus, I think part of it was that I was willing to, so I wouldn't lose, I was willing to go faster than he was willing to go. So, you know, like some of it's a little bit, you got to be a little bit nuts. The snowboard thing was the same way. I would beat everybody because I would lay that thing perfect. I don't give a shit if I wipe out. I'm not coming in second. So, like, how much of the race car driving is you're willing to push the envelope of...
Well, some of it comes in braking. So when a car, if you're trying to reel a car in front of you, you're watching when they start to hit the brake. And if you're trying to reel them in, they brake, and then you kind of want to wait.
Yeah, you got to hold on, right?
Wait before you brake so you can kind of close the gap.
Yeah, right.
Now, the problem comes in with if the first car who's waiting to brake waits too long to brake, now you're both in trouble.
Yeah,
you don't realize
right.
Because you've gone, there's a point
so
where
do you got to
have
race the guy or race the track more?
If I'm behind someone, I'm trying to race them. I'm trying to close the gap and get in a position where I can get around them. If I'm leading, I try not to. I definitely look in my mirror at times, but I try to just focus on the track. I'm trying to brake here, turn here.
Right.
I'm not focused on behind me. I look over my shoulder and in my mirror before I get to a turn to make sure no one's alongside me, so no one surprised me. Other than that,
right.
When I'm in front, I focus on the track, and if I'm behind someone trying to catch them, I'm kind of focused on
exactly what they're doing.
Yeah. And
now, when you're practicing, are you strictly just trying to beat the track as far as like, you know, the things that are in the track or trying to find the right line, or because you're just working on your time then, right?
Well, when I'm practicing, I do that. I definitely, the last time I was out, it was all about time, trying to brake at a certain spot, turn in a certain spot, and then ultimately have a little lap time.
Right.
But there are times I go out and I go offline, because in a race, you're not always going to be able to be in position like you would want to be.
Yeah, right.
You know, there's a car in your way, you can't, you know, we both
so
can't occupy.
You're in that racing situation. Is there, you know, we all had friends growing up that, like, we used to go to the Brandon Street quarries, the ones out in Joliet there. And the quarry, the way it's set up, you know, obviously water's level, and the quarry cliffs go from a 6 or 7 foot cliff, and they rise up to like a 40-foot cliff up by the road, right? So like the ground goes up, but the water's level. And we used to like work our way up, right? You'd start down in the 6 or 8 foot ones jumping off, and then we'd go a little higher, till you're up on like a thing that's 40 foot off the water, and you're jumping in there. Well, only me and like Chris Dwyer would dive off of the 40-foot one, you know, in there. Everyone else is like, oh, no, you know, feet first. When you're racing, like when we were at the club there, it seemed like you knew a bunch of people that were in there, right? Like you knew everybody that was around. When you're racing, you know everybody. I mean, you knew you passed the one guy when we were out there, so you know the cars and everything else. Is there somebody out there that's like, that fucker's nuts? Like, you got to look out for that fucking guy.
Well, I've been wrecked before, and even in GT, so that's an expensive crash.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, there is that driver that right. Doesn't care, or is a little, or maybe doesn't understand, doesn't have enough knowledge.
Right. I mean, is there a guy that's just like, winning is everything, I don't give a shit about anything in the world except for winning that race? Because there's not big money in what you're doing, so why would a guy, not. You know...
Well, some people just want to win at all costs, but
right.
Not at the club. It definitely happens in some motorsports, but the club is, for most part, is, you know, we're friends on and off the track. And,
yeah, sure.
There's some new faces this year, so that I haven't run against. It's nice to race against the same people because you kind of understand their tendencies and their abilities and where their weaknesses are, and you can, you know, overtake them in the.
Yeah.
But in terms of winning at all costs, no, I haven't come across that.
No, right.
Some, you know, they understand that these cars are expensive and there's a little more leeway out there, but it's still hard driving.
Oh yeah. Oh my god.
Contact still happens.
Dude, you were just practicing, and I was like, "This is hard driving. Holy cow! We're not messing around." I can't even. I'm sure it's stepped up 5 levels when you're in a race.
Well, race, you have to be a little more aware. There's
How many cars are on the track when you're racing?
well, it depends. It depends on the day. I think we've had as many as 30 on track,
Really?
and which is a lot for GT.
Now, do you know the distance of the entire track? What's one lap?
Yeah. So there's 2 tracks. There's a north and a south. So the one is a little bit over 2 miles, and the other one is like 1.5 miles.
Yeah.
And
So
we were on the one that's just over 2 miles.
just over 2 miles and 30 cars are out there.
Yeah.
How do they work positioning that for starting?
Well, there's qualifying. So they have a
Okay.
green flag.
Sure.
So you have 30 minutes. So you can go out on track or come in whenever you want, but you got 30 minutes.
Right.
You go out there and you make the best laps you can, and whatever your fastest time is, that's your qualifying time.
So that you're now. So explain that to somebody like. So that if you're the guy with the fastest lap, you're in the pole.
You're the pole, so you'll be the first car.
So it's the opposite of socialism. Right? I mean, socialism would be you put the guy who's slowest in
That's
the
why I
front.
love it so much.
Must be. But so like, well, I mean, it's the opposite of everything that's, most sports teams are that
Not
way
only
too.
is it the
But if you're the
first-
guy, if you're the football team that finishes last, you get the best draft pick.
So not
But
only are
basketball,
you,
same thing.
not only are you first with the fastest time, but
I didn't really want to make a debut, and we broke my bottle of bourbon. But all right, so we were talking about a guy winning at all costs, and you said you had a guy that did hit you.
I did get in an accident a few years back, and it's just one of those drivers. He was a faster car. I passed him, and he a few turns later he just plowed me. And,
Really?
Yeah.
Like out of anger, kind of a deal.
Well, I wouldn't say out of anger. I definitely he had the red mist going where, I'm a lower class car. He's got to get back around me, but
Yeah.
he just didn't have it. Right at the apex, he hit me in the back quarter, knocked the wheel out of my hand. I mean, I got hit hard,
Yeah, right.
and hopefully he learned from that.
Now you were fine, like you.
Yeah, I was
just
fine,
Spun
yeah.
out or whatever, and then.
Yeah, you would. I mean, definitely, I got hit hard, but all the safety gear did its thing, and my neck never. I was maybe was a little worried that, because I have quite a bit of, as I'm sure
Hardware,
you do,
yep.
is hardware in my neck, and
Right.
it's never been a problem, and I never really thought about it either when I'm driving,
Right after that, it wasn't like a little bit like, oh man, someone does that again. I don't know if I'm gonna like this is not.
it never really, and I crashed the rental car to get in this wheelchair, so
Yeah.
you would think that maybe it's in the back of my mind, but it's you just have to be so focused because we're going so fast and there's so many little
Sure.
nuances of where to turn and when to apply the gas. I don't know. I don't really think about any of the other stuff except what I have to do. I think
Right.
that's why I like it so much. You have to kind of detach from the real world and focus on what the hell's going
Oh
on.
yeah, no, I'm sure that it's a complete mental that's the thing for me that was always fishing was always my thing, right? But it wasn't like fishing like what some people fish to relax, and I fished to like fish on the edge, like as hard as I could. It was musky fishing, and musky fishing is an exercise in mental focus over a 10-hour day, because you're going to come in contact with the fish once or twice, maybe if you're really lucky 3 times today. You're going to come in contact, and when it happens, if you're not on your game, it's over. You're going to miss that fish. So it was a thing where you're working really hard and you got to keep mental focus. Keeping mental focus like that takes you away from, there's a general contractor. I've got 5 or 6 employees and jobs and clients and everything else going on, and I don't think about that at all because I'm completely mentally focused on exactly what I'm doing, which has got to be. There's so much. I was in that car and I'm like, good God, man, there's so much going on here. Like, you're looking at the next curve. Everything's, and it's coming so fast. Like, it's got to be. You can't think about anything else.
No,
There's
it's so I find it great. It keeps me mentally focused. It's a great hobby because of I enjoy it, but
Anyone ever experienced anything like vertigo or anything like that? Because it it's violent. I mean, it's a
I've
thing.
had some passengers been ruined. My wife's had some friends come to the track, and the husband went for a ride, and I don't know. I think he should have done 5 laps instead of 6. And the sixth
one too many.
He gave me the thumbs down, and we came and he had to lay down for a couple hours before he could go home.
That's funny. You kept asking me, and I'm like, oh yeah. I was absolutely. There was no chance. Like
I couldn't believe it because
I was going as far as we were going. I have no problem with this at all. This is awesome. But
you're the minority.
Yeah, right. I could totally see someone like bailing on it. But I'll tell you what. Even though the whole time I was having a good time, and I was like, absolutely, go. When we got out of the car and I got back in the chair and we were bussing around, like there was probably like a 30 or 40 minute between when I drove and then when you drove first. I needed that 30 minutes because it was definitely like you almost had to get your head around not moving that like everything. There's so much sensory stuff going on at one time. The sounds, the everything moving, the G-force, the everything that you almost need like a decompression, like a little tiny bit of time.
So all the things you mentioned are, part of the game, but the other stuff that's maybe a little more technical that you don't understand, like the tire pressure.
Yeah,
If,
right.
We're shooting for the tires that I run. I'm shooting for 29 pounds hot.
Yeah.
And if they're a couple pounds over, I'll know. The car just won't stop the same.
Sure.
So the settings for the sway bars, the shocks have 35 different combinations. There's a lot of like setup that I had to learn over the years to get the car where I felt comfortable driving it fast.
Right.
With just my hands. And that was a longer process than I thought. I just thought, all right, I'm going to get in the car. I'm going to make fast laps. And I was like, wait, what? We got shock adjustments? We got sway bar adjustments? We got wing adjustments?
And that too, like, I was really surprised that the track is first rate as far as, like, the services that go on there. And I don't know how that works. Like, is it...
There's safety and there's medics. They're waiting. If something happens, there's fire guys that go out there. We have...
That and then the whole guys in the garage that were like right there to work on whatever you want them to work on or like, change the tire pressure. Like they were all over it. They're like a pit crew that you got of your own.
Well, that's one of the benefits of buying. I built that car through Eurosport. So when I come in, they understand my position. I can't, just jump in the car.
I'm sure they don't have to tend to people as much as me and you because they had to pick my ass up and put me in the car. Like, the cage and everything in there is like almost up to the windowsill on the car. It's a small area to get me in there and everything else. And being paralyzed from my chest down, they were, a couple guys lift me right up and scoot me right in there and everything else. And then when I got back, same thing, picked me up right out of there and put me back in my chair. But as far as the car went, technically, they were, they had seemed like I said, it seemed like your own little pit crew.
They ask me questions and I give them feedback. I have a logbook, so every time I come off track, we record the temperature for the day, what the conditions were, and then what my tire pressures were, so when I go back out on a similar day, we can guess closer to the right.
Now, is it up to you, or do they check like the life you have left in your brake pads and the life you have left in your tire tread?
Well, yes, if I'm in a race, they check the car before I go and race.
Okay.
So Nick is the only one who touches my car. He looks it over, and if he gives me a green light, I'm going to go out and race that car. And then I pay for that service. They go over
I was going to ask, yeah.
Fine-tune car,
right,
look at the rim, make sure there's no cracks. If there's little cracks in the rotors, anything that may be unsafe, they're gonna flag it and tell me, hey,
right.
Or it's all good.
Yeah.
And then I give them feedback. When I take the car out, it's doing this, it's pushing this way, and then we make adjustments based on that. So now I've been working with them for it's my 5th year in that car, and we're at the point now, I got a lot of laps, and
right.
I can give them feedback, and then we can make appropriate changes to
right.
And then I have the data. So
yeah, it's so full service over there as far as everything goes. Like you're not. I mean, are there guys out there that are on their own?
There are guys that are one-man bands, and more power to them because they know exactly, they know their car. They did the setup themselves. They wrench on the car themselves, and I think that makes a better driver when you understand everything. But I'm kind of in a position where there's some things I can't do, obviously. So that's, but I still understand what's going on. It's
right. I don't know. I look at it like, like the wrestling stuff and everything else. It's always good to get a point of view that's not your point of view, right? Like, so if a guy's background is turning a wrench, that's maybe a better someone to bounce stuff off of.
I can give you an example where, so I'm fortunate enough to own a share of a garage at the track, so I keep my car on the grounds, which is nice. And my one partner, I let him drive my car, and I wanted his feedback on a particular corner.
Okay.
And I didn't tell him why. I just said, drive the car and tell me what you think. And then we made some changes, and I had him drive it because he can feel the car.
Yeah, right.
And when we got all of a sudden done, we made the appropriate changes. I drove the car. It was 100 times better. And then I told him what the skinny was. I go, I wanted you to drive the car and tell me what you feel. If I told you what I wanted the car to do, you would have been like, oh, well, then you just do this.
Yeah.
Turn this and change that setting. I didn't want that. I wanted, this is what I feel. I wanted someone who's able-bodied to go out there and drive.
Sure.
And I think I gained a little respect from him. Just telling him, I didn't give him the end game. I didn't give the score.
Right.
So I can tell some things in the car. I have to use my shoulders because I can't feel my butt at all.
Yeah, right.
So my shoulders are my antennae of what the car is doing. So one thing we haven't talked about is, so you learn the dry line, but we race in the rain.
Yeah, right. So there's a wet line, right?
There's a wet line.
Yeah, right.
And I've raced in the rain before in that car, and I practice in the rain. I love driving in the rain. And I've had people say, what makes you a good rain driver? And I said, well, first of all, you got to want to drive in the rain.
Yeah, right.
Because if you went out there and you tried to drive the dry line in the rain, you'd go right off track.
Sure.
It just gets smooth like a penny left on a railroad track.
Right.
So anywhere you'd want to be in the wet.
I'd be apprehensive about that, boy, man. Just tiny bit of hydroplaning in that. It's, no more contact with the road.
Well, if you're on the wet line.
Right.
So everywhere in the dry is slick as can be, and everywhere that you would not be on the dry has grip in the wet.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Right.
So once you learn where to be on track, whole different ballgame.
Right. So much to learn. I mean, as far as that goes, like just getting out there and driving fast is not the deal. I mean,
and that's how, and honestly, my first time with Chris Weaver, I drove fast. I was in the 911, and he kept yelling at me to brake, and yell. And so when we went in and had a powwow, I said, listen, you just tell me what to do. I've never done this before. I was a little nervous, and I was trying to go fast. And he's like, don't worry about going fast, just learn the line.
Now, how long can, Paul Newman and all those guys, they were driving when they were, in their 70s. How long do you plan to, as long as you can? Or
that's a good question. I know guys in their 70s who are incredible drivers at the club.
Yeah.
National champions.
They don't lose anything off of their reflexes or anything, huh?
If they do, it's they're not showing it because I've raced against some of these guys that are older, and it's, the eyesight might not be as good, the reflexes might not be as good, but they have so much experience in car control that I think it makes up for any age difference.
Sure.
As long as I'm going to go, I drove this weekend. I drove Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which is rare. I normally don't drive 2 days in a row. Practice 2 days in a row.
Sure.
It's really hard on my body.
Yeah, right.
And like today, I was down for the count because I drove Sunday.
Well, there's so much. So when you say it's hard on your body, I would work in the field with my guys from, I get there at 6:30, job starts at 7, and then we work until 5:30 at night. Physical job, and anything that I had my guys do, I would do too. So if it was carrying shingles up on the roof, whatever was going on, I didn't shy away from any work, like physical work. I would be more exhausted after 3 sales appointments than I would ever be from physically doing something. The mental exhaustion has got to be something too. Like driving days in a row, do you find yourself like, man, I just need to use a nap? Like, you know?
No, the mental part for practicing doesn't bother me because I'm focused. I know what I'm trying to accomplish. And when I'm done with the session, I'm looking at the data, going over with Kester, like, you know, where can I be better? It's physically, I mean, he rode. So,
Yeah. No, I can't even imagine.
So when I'm done with, because that's a lot of transfers.
Yeah,
See,
too. Sure.
I think that's the part that people don't understand. Like, you get out of a car. Well, not you, but a regular person gets out of the car.
Yep.
It's not a big deal.
Nope.
You saw what it takes to get in and out of the car because you've been in the race car.
So Rob got here today, and I hadn't, usually if I go somewhere and I meet him for lunch or something like that, you know, I'm getting out of my vehicle, he's getting out of his vehicle. I never get to actually see you get out of the vehicle, and Rob's getting out of a Porsche that the thing is literally, what about 10 inches off the ground, 12 inches off the ground tops? So he's sitting way down there, and he gets himself all the way up into a wheelchair, which is a good 22 inches off the ground. And, you know, it's impressive to watch you even just get out of I mean, you're not a little guy, you know what I mean? Neither am I. So, like, it's hard to do. And you do it, I do it with a board. I put the board on my ass, and I slide across that board and get in there. You're just picking your ass up and throwing it in.
Well, I started with the board. You know, when I was hurt in the hospital that I was at for rehab, they, you know, I had to learn to use the board. And I still use a board for, like, going on vacations or, like, getting in a hotel bed and stuff. You know,
sure.
I definitely have the board. And I'll tell you a funny story about the board in a second. But in terms of street cars, it's all about, it's not the height, even though that's pretty far from going from the seat up into the wheelchair.
Yeah.
It's that width. It's how far away it is.
Right, how far away it is, right.
And so I've learned my technique's pretty solid. So
it is technique, yeah, because you can pivot on your almost on your feet sort of a thing.
And my hand is a little bit better than yours,
yes,
so I can push with my hand in a certain way. And when Porsche makes a van, then we'll talk about vans. Right? Until then, vans.
So for me, this is the first time I've had a guy in a chair, here to talk. For me, I drive a van with a regular, rat lift on the side. So, pretty much, hoist my ass up and down into the vehicle. And then I jump my ass out of my chair into I don't use a board for that. You know what I mean? Like for that, sure. I just go back and forth. Boom, no problem. It's a pretty level transfer. And like you said, the gap it's 5 inches that I'm going over. So, I mean, I pretty much got one butt cheek on the other,
right.
Other side already.
It's not a big gap.
No. So it's no big deal. But if I'm by myself, that's how I'm rolling. I'm in my van, and I go wherever I go, get out in the lift, take off, bust in. If I'm with somebody, I'm in my Subaru, and they just pit
Speeding, no doubt.
Speeding, yeah, no doubt.
Right.
My thing is I got to go slow everywhere I go. So, I shouldn't say that either. How are you in your chair? I'm fast in my chair too, man. Like if I'm at Lowe's, like getting stuff, people are like, "Damn, where's he going?" And I'm like, I'm going way faster than anyone would walk all the time.
I'm not quite that fast, but I definitely don't dilly dally.
No.
The only time I dally is when I'm coming out of the gym, and I'm doing good to open the damn door.
Yeah, right. Well, for me, I don't know how it is for you. I can, once I've done something a bunch of times, I can do it no problem. It's when I go somewhere and I got to rent a car and it's different.
Mm-hmm. You got to figure out the nuances.
Where the hell am I going to put this hand and that hand and everything else? Like you were saying with the Porsche, it's great because the key's where it's at, so he rolls his window down and uses the door as part of his transfers.
My head kind of goes where the window is.
Right.
And so the reason the key is on the left.
Yeah, you told me this at the track, but it's interesting.
Is in endurance racing, drivers started outside the car and they ran across and they got in the car.
Right.
And Porsche could put the key on the left side of so they could be putting the key in.
Right. So picture yourself in your car. Usually you got your steering wheel in front of you, and to the right of the steering wheel is where your ignition's at. The Porsche ignition is almost out the door.
It's on the dash on the left side of the wheel, and they did that so the drivers could be starting the car while they're getting in, and that gave them an advantage.
They didn't reach around the wheel. Right.
They had their shit was started and off they go.
Right.
So,
right. So for Rob, it allows him to have the window down while he's transferring, and then get all the way in his chair, and he doesn't have to try and almost roll back into the car to get the ignition turned off. You can turn it off right there.
No, it's right there. Whereas some of my cars, I gotta put my hand around the column, and it's a pain in the ass.
Right. I get around there with an auto start. On my van, it's auto start. So like, it's always running when I'm
Let me tell you the slide board before I forget.
Cool.
So my dad is retired. Was a master carpenter, and I gave him the specs of the slide board. I said, "Hey, I need you to use all your magic, and here's what I want." So he makes the slide board, and so I drew a template and I put where I wanted the holes. I don't know if yours has a hole.
I've got a couple different, I know people in the rehab industry, so like I've got a couple different like demo boards and stuff like that. And the ones that I usually use have a hole that's like sideways, but I've got one that's got them.
Okay, so these are on one end, and they're a standard like routed out hole.
Yeah,
it's
right,
maybe.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know, 1.5 inches wide or something.
Yeah, big enough for your fingers.
And I wanted one hole here and one hole like here. And my dad put this hole, so they're real close to each other.
Okay.
And so it's totally not what I had made.
Sure.
So, but what I found when I tried it, I could get my thumb and my index finger through it.
Oh, there you go, right.
And it helped me to pull it out.
Sure.
And I've been using it for 14 years. It's like the only way to do it.
Now, what did he make? Now, so what we're talking about is it's a board that bridges a gap. So, like, if I go to a hotel and,
this is for all you TSA people who go, "What's this?" I'm like, "It's a piece of wood." What's that for?
I've had mechanics that, so when I get out of my car, I leave the board on the seats.
I saw that in the middle there.
Well, I put it in the middle when I'm driving, but when I get out, it's on the seat itself. So then when I come back up, I can grab it and get on it. So I got out of my vehicle, took it in for a brake job or whatever I did, and I left the board upright against the back of the seat, and the mechanic got out there, jumped in it, the keys were, in it, and he drove it around the back, and he comes in, he goes, "Man," he goes, "what's that thing you got? I like that on my back." He thought it was for like his lumbar support or something. Like, no, dude, that's why I slide my ass across to get in that vehicle. But so the board is like it's like a 30-inch sometimes. So they make them a little bit shorter. Thing that a guy in a chair uses to bridge a large gap. So if I go to a hotel, and hotels are a crapshoot, I've showed up at a hotel get an accessible room, and the damn bed is shoulder height.
It's Princess in the Pea.
I know. I'm like what the hell is going on with this stupid thing? But I got to get that board and then work my way up onto the bed. So I got to get the bed. The trick is making that transfer of the bare ass out of the shower. It's a whole lot harder going uphill like that. But so that's the board we're talking about. And, I use it for the car stuff constantly, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, so I don't use it for the race car.
Right.
The way we built our cage fits the rules. You have to have 2 bars by the door, and we just lowered them. The rules doesn't say how high they have to be. So on my
that's modified. I didn't realize that.
So like on your side, how you were saying how high they are, almost like shoulder height.
Yep.
That's how the cage was, but we cut it and lowered the bars.
Yeah.
So I can transfer and get my butt on those bars, and if you notice, they're just a little bit higher than the seat, so I can kind of fall down into the car.
Right.
And then I tie my left leg to the cage, so I have like a little, like a strap that has like a breakaway clasp. So if someone had to yank me out, it
just snaps off. Right.
But it keeps my left leg from flopping behind the brake.
Yeah, which is another dangerous thing that probably someone wouldn't think about. But if you're driving a vehicle and you can't move your legs and your one foot ends up behind the brake.
Which happened to me on turn 10 at Homestead. And we're going like 110 off the high bank. And I went to hit the brake and I only had half the brake because my foot is behind the pedal.
Right.
So that's how I found out the hard way.
Right. My first reaction is like, my brakes are screwed up because I can't feel my foot either, right?
I looked down and I mean, it's just instinct to look like what's stopping the brake, right? Because all of a sudden I brake and it was my foot back there. So we got a strap, and so I've been driving the race car with a strap ever since.
Right.
And they actually made like a little metal plate, like where the dead pedal would be. That's where my foot sits.
Sure.
So they made like a small plate so it kind of holds it in the dead pedal area.
Right.
So it doesn't fly behind the brake. Because my pedals work normal.
Yeah.
So like an able-bodied driver, if I'm allowed to
me too. Right.
someone drive it, that still works. So.
I don't want anyone ever grabbing my hand controls. Like I'm like, hey, the mechanic gets in there. They always want to try to. I'm like, hey, if you would just do me a favor and just drive it like you would normally drive it, because you're gonna wreck the thing. Like you're gonna screw it up.
So Tony Kester, who's my driving coach, racing coach, he went to get gas in the car, the old way with the push the brake. Yeah. He damn near wrecked it. So he came back and said, I don't know how you do this. This is crazy. The new system is a little more user friendly for someone who's never driven.
Now, see, yours are different than mine. Like I said, mine is, and I don't know, I didn't mind the way like you taught me how to do it. Like, and I pretty much had it after a little bit. I think my problem was I felt like I was riding the brake a little bit sometimes when I was.
But that's okay.
Right.
You were hitting. Your problem was you were hitting the gas in the turn.
Yeah.
When you needed to lift, let the car turn, and then
roll
on the gas.
Certainly.
You were just like,
get
on the gas and like turn.
I just felt weird about the whole like I don't. So his controls are more like a motorbike, like a dirt bike, where you're throttling by turning. Mine are I'm pushing down and actually back towards me. So it's kind of on a diagonal.
Well, I had a car with those.
Yeah.
The problem with like in a sports car is there's not a lot of room with your legs.
Sure.
So I went with the twist because it doesn't affect.
Then they're not going to move so much, right?
Doesn't affect.
Right.
But in my race car, I have a ring inside the steering wheel that goes in and out.
Okay, so explain that. So
yeah, so
is that in your thumb or what do you or index finger? What are you doing?
Well, the very first time I took it out, it was with my thumbs. Mm-hmm. So I'm holding the steering wheel with both hands and I have to take my right hand off to push the brake. And I don't know, we did like 6 or 7 laps and I'm coming in and Kester's like, well, what are we coming in for? Because we're mic'd up. And I said, bro, my thumbs are about to fall off. Like, I just don't have the thumb strength to push.
Sure.
Because the ring has pressure like the gas pedal. So when you push the ring in to go, if you let it go, it would spring back. Okay. So there has like some tension.
Sure.
So what I did is I built up the ring with like I cut foam and glued it on there. So I roll my wrist. So I'm using the like inner part of my thumb right here.
Right.
And I just turn my wrists to go.
And this allows you to never take your hands off the wheel.
Well, except to brake.
To brake, right.
So, so pretty much anywhere I hold the steering wheel, I can access the ring.
Sure.
So I have foam in certain spots to let me roll my wrist, but there's some turns where I'm using my thumb, and I actually have a little notch where there is no foam because I found it easier to put my thumb right on the actual ring. So I have some little tricks on the ring.
Yeah. Right,
so some has foam, some parts don't. It all depends what I'm trying to do.
Sure. No, I mean it's. I was trying to watch what you were doing, and there's a whole lot going on there, and like in no way, I don't think that they could come up with anything that would somehow give you an advantage over a guy that was able-bodied, just because you're holding yourself in the seat and everything else.
Yeah, for spinal cord, there's definitely now. In this last year, the 24 Daytona, BMW has a driver, Alex Zanardi, who is a double amputee.
Yeah, right. You were telling me about that.
He drove with hand controls. So BMW, it was a big deal for him to come and race the 24 hours in a BMW. Mm-hmm. But he'd already raced like at Spa and a couple other places in endurance racing with the similar setup. So that was in Europe. It didn't get a big bunch of hype. But here in the States, it was the first time. And he doesn't have a ring, but it's similar to how mine is set up. It was like a butterfly steering wheel, and on the back for his left hand, he could squeeze the gas pedal from behind the steering wheel.
Right.
And then his brake was a bar that stood up and down over here to the right. And then on the top, he could hit the downshift.
Sure.
Which is similar to my bar is... horizontal.
Yeah.
His bar was vertical, but my I have a downshift button on my brake, just like him.
Right.
And he was very effective. He drove amazing, but he's not a spinal cord, so he sweats. He's got all his all his abs.
I can't stress more. Okay, so and I know you well enough, and you know me well enough that like I'm never looking for sympathy for any of it. And I think some of my problem is the people that I'm around a lot. They see me do everything that I do without any problem. Like I go wherever I go. I'm coaching. I'm working. I'm doing everything I'm doing, and nothing slows me down. But people don't see the backstory of that situation. When my sons have to be at a wrestling tournament at 7 a.m., I have to get up at 3:30 a.m. on a shower day to make that happen. Yeah. So, I mean, like, there's all that going on, and then we're there all day and everything else, and there is so much more to what I'm doing than what you're seeing. And with your situation, like, you know, everybody's pretty cool about the whole wheelchair stuff. You know, they're sympathetic to you, got something going on. They're always trying to help. Sometimes, you know, I get the situation where I'm like, oh, no, you know, I got the door. I got it. And I'm not, you know, trying to be a dick, but they take it as I am. And I'm like, listen, I'm not. I wouldn't have, like, this wouldn't be what I'm doing if I couldn't get through the door, sort of a deal. But, you know, your heart's in the right place. I always thank them, all that kind of stuff. But I had someone that said, what's the big deal? You're just sitting in a chair now. I like to sit. And I'm like, no. Like you know, I don't want to have that conversation with you because I'm going to be a dick now.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what's going on. There's way more going on here. And when you're in that car, it's an amazing thing that you're doing because there's so much that you don't have as far as the feeling thing. Just being able to feel feeling the inertia and everything else that's in the vehicle, you don't have the same as somebody else does. They're not sweating. You don't have the same as somebody else does.
You got to feel like, obviously, I slid the car a little bit in a couple spots, but I don't think you could really tell. But the car can go away really fast. Sure. Like, you could look on the track and you see all the marks of people that spun before me. Right. So it goes away really quick.
Sure.
So I set my car up a little bit more, not as loose as a maybe able-bodied person, just so my car's not, but I still can spin.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is anyone who's not thoroughly impressed with what you're doing out there isn't paying attention because they're just looking at it like, well, yeah, he's got money to buy a really nice car and take care of it real well.
I made sure that when I got my license from the track that I wasn't treated different. I didn't want like a special, any special privileges. So my car meets the same weight and horsepower as any other car that's in my class, and I don't get any advantage. So I think that's what makes winning my class so impressive. Is, you know, I've had some people ask me like, well, how many wheelchair drivers were in your class? I'm like, what?
None. Yeah.
No, it was all able-bodied people.
This is an absolutely fucking preposterous thing that I'm doing here, and there aren't a whole bunch of people doing it.
There's like 5 or 6 of us in the country that can drive a car at this level, and from a wheelchair. And I mean, there's people out there, but it's not easy. And the ones that can maybe excel are hurt a little lower than you and I. You know, a T or maybe an L.
And I mean, that's the other thing too that people don't realize too. If, you know, the difference between a guy who's paralyzed from his waist down and me is the same difference between him and a guy that doesn't have an injury at all. There's nothing wrong with him because
just can't use his legs.
He just can't use his legs. And I mean, I'm not belittling him. Whatever he's doing, I'm sure it's difficult. There's just levels to this thing.
This is an animal. This is a whole different level. When I didn't realize as a quad that I didn't sweat. When I was in the hospital, I would go out at lunchtime and I would sit in this little courtyard, and it was like where I was at was pretty hot, and I couldn't figure out like after lunch why I was like, they didn't tell me I wasn't sweating. I didn't even think about it.
No, right.
So, fast forward till now to get in a car, it's as you found out, it's a really hot environment on a fairly cool day for racing. So I haven't fully fired it up yet, but I have a new cool system called Chill Out.
Yeah,
It's similar to like Rini, where it's like a mini air conditioner that moves this fluid. So I don't have to keep reloading ice into a cooler and running that through the system.
I just saw a Facebook ad for something that like a worker would put. It fits in the small of his back, so he's standing up, he's working. He's got a coat on, like a windbreaker, and it blows air, refrigerated air, through his whole. And I'm like, man, that's something maybe I should work out. Because when I overheat, and I don't know how you are, I start like panting like a dog. I'm like, man, I got to get some cool going on in there, and just dogs don't sweat either.
It's like I was at Laguna Seca for MotoGP, which is like the Formula One for motorcycles. Maybe 7 years ago. my aunt got me tickets. She knew I was a huge motorcycle fan. And it was like almost, I don't know, 96 in the desert out there, and it was hot, but there's 2 factory Ducatis in the field. I'm like, I told my wife, I go out there, I'm going to die in this heat just so I can watch these factory Ducatis race.
Right.
It was, you get to a point where you're so overheated, it's tough to come back.
I've gotten there. I had a party one time, and a bunch of people came out, and I was out there all day having a great time, and then all of a sudden it hit me like I am not in good shape.
Yeah. So you get that part. So in the system I was using, you had to fill a cooler with ice and water, and then that water runs through the suit that's underneath my fire suit.
Right.
But what happens is, we made, I think, 12 laps, which is really good but a race is double that.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Oh,
so we got a ways to go. We did half a race.
Yeah, I would have made that. There's no way. Not with that helmet on and all that.
Right. So the cool suit gets me maybe 2/3 of the way. And then that ice is completely melted. The water is still fairly cool, but it's not like cooling me down. But this new system, I have real high hopes.
With the refrigerant.
It's just it'll be able to keep me cool the whole race.
Right.
And that's going to change the game, because that helps me make good decisions and keep me cool. And that's the one thing that I'm at a huge disadvantage against other people is I can't cool my body at all.
Right.
So, not walking, push that aside. I don't care about walking.
No.
If I could sweat.
Yeah. Right.
We'd be, behold from.
Right. And I mean, and then we've talked about it. For me, there's absolutely nothing that's embarrassing about the whole wheelchair stuff. So, I mean, I'll say, if someone said, hey, would you like to have your legs back or bowel and bladder control? I want bowel and bladder.
Give me that bowel and bladder.
Yeah, right. I'll bust around the damn chair, man, but, I want to have total control of that situation, which a guy that's an amputee, he's got his complete body. He can feel every inch of it.
So I got a lot of comparisons, we saw Alex, racing in 24 Hours Daytona, which is great. Alex is great.
Yeah.
But he won, I think, 2 gold medals from the chair. He hasn't let losing his leg slow him down.
Yep, awesome. Right.
But, not sweating and putting a fire suit on is like, and then the environment is you got to see how hot it gets, even on a cool day. I picked a really, or maybe a hard sport or hobby picked me, I'm not sure, but boy, if I could sweat, it'd be different. So I got to be really careful. There's been some races at the track where I don't run because it's been too hot.
Yeah. Oh,
you saw how much gear like I have to wear.
Yes.
Because if
you had the coat you had me wear, I was like, man.
Yeah,
I'm not happy about this coat.
Yeah, but that gives you fighting chance.
Right. Fire protection for sure. Right. No. You got to do it.
I wanted you to at least have something on there, and God forbid we catch on fire. But I've been in the Corvette. I had fire. I had inboard fire.
You said that, yeah.
And I was able to get out. The smoke in the cockpit is boy, it all happens really fast, and so I'm able, as long as I'm conscious, I can get out of the race car no problem.
Yeah,
I thought that would be a problem, but you got to have all the gear on, and boy, that really, even when I practice, I wear the gear,
right?
Because you can have a
you never know
problem in
sure. I mean, sports wise, practice is when most people get jacked up because you're out there practicing more than you're racing anyway. So let me just go through them here. I know you saw them there on social media, but I've got some questions that I throw the podcast up there, and if I get questions, I really appreciate the questions. And so my buddy Brian asked, let me pull this by me here. I put out there that that you were going to be on some race questions, and some guys, obviously I didn't specify what race we were doing, so I think NASCAR stuff comes to mind and everything else. But Brian asks, just went to Indy race at Road America yesterday. How does he feel about road courses versus ovals? And I think we kind of hit on that a little bit. It's a completely different animal as far as that goes.
Yeah, it's completely different. I wouldn't say one is better than another, so that wouldn't be fair. It's just I prefer the road course, and I've driven Road America, which is like, the pros drive there. It's like it would be like playing Augusta. The pros get to play Augusta, but
sure.
In road racing, we can actually drive on the same tracks as the pros. And if I have a choice, I drove Homestead. I've drove the oval part, and I drove the road course. But road courses, up, down, left, right. It takes it's a whole different.
If I was going to hire a getaway guy, it would be you. Because I mean, you're taking corners and doing everything that you have to do. I mean, you're gonna get away, sort of thing. You know what I mean? Like, right? I mean, you're on the street.
I've learned I've learned a lot of car control over the years. It's been great.
Right.
So road courses is what I prefer.
Yeah. I think you're learning more, but I don't know jack shit about any of it anyway.
Well, the Indy cars there are fast. It's pretty crazy.
Oh, I can't even imagine that low center of gravity.
That's a fast course. Yeah, a lot of downforce.
All right, so my friend Tim asks, are stock cars, meaning NASCAR, modified versions of factory-built autos? Does a NASCAR vehicle branded as a Toyota Camry have any relation at all to a Camry used in a personal car?
So back in the day, they used to be like a production car.
Right.
Okay. But now they're fully tube chassis, full built race cars. So the only thing they resemble is the shape, basically, of the car they're trying to emulate.
Right.
In road racing, there's IMSA, so the GT cars are probably more closer to that, where like.
But NASCAR, I mean, the suspension's not the same.
No,
nothing's the same.
No, they got $20,000 shocks and crazy stuff like that. That's got nothing to do with street cars.
Right.
They're purpose-built race cars.
Yes. Right. With lots of stickers and sponsors and all the other stuff. Okay. Bill, a buddy of mine, asks, do all races go counterclockwise, and if so, why? And I mean, I know we were going clockwise.
We were, so I'm not sure why, but we'll use Indy for an example. So Indy goes counterclockwise, but in 2000, when F1 came, they go the other way.
Okay, right.
So I'm not sure why we always go left.
Yeah, why it's left-hand turns.
Yeah, but in road racing, we go left and right. So,
right. I mean, the only thing that comes to mind for me is if I'm in a NASCAR race and I'm taking left turns and I spin towards the wall, at least I'm hitting the passenger side.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either. That's all I got.
I don't know.
As far as like logic, just trying to like wing it on my own there. Okay, and then Bill also asks, what movie best depicts racing? And he gives a couple examples like Days of Thunder, Tom Cruise movie, which Tom Cruise movies never depict anything correctly. I mean, I watched, this one you would dig too. Like, did you see Born on the 4th of July? I watched that entire movie thinking, no.
Yeah.
That's not how it goes. No. And the guy, Ronnie, that's in that is an actual dude who was involved in the movie. Why did he stop and be like, what are you doing, man? Why are you acting like that? That's not how a guy in a wheelchair acts at all. But yeah, so he gives Days of Thunder. He gives Pixar's Cars, which obviously I don't think it depicts anything. Rush, Talladega Nights, which one of my favorite movies. I mean, and I just like it because it makes fun of, the redneck baby Jesus stuff and everything else. And then Driven. Did you see Driven?
I have.
That was pretty good.
I've seen everything on the list.
Yeah, it's Stroker Ace was the other one.
And I would say that depicts racing is Steve McQueen made a movie called Le Mans.
Right.
And, I mean, they actually had a car with all these cameras.
I thought it was Le Mans, but you're getting all fancy on Le Mans.
Well, it's the town Le Mans in France.
Right.
And it's 24 hours. It's the greatest endurance race in the world. And they made a movie with a car in the field with all the cameras on there. And they actually had it, I think, if they didn't have to come in and change film and stuff, like that car had a chance to win the race.
Sure. So
I think that's the best depicting of what racing is. It's kind of a cult classic now, but in terms of endurance racing and like making decisions and the tragedy of crashes, that movie shows it all.
Yeah.
Niki Lauda and James Hunt, they had a movie. Ron Howard directed. I think that's probably the next best like glimpse of racing.
Sure.
But yeah, give them all a chance.
Yeah, I mean, you can't do the Steve McQueen movie anyway. I mean, I think he's somehow like gonna make a cult comeback as far as like there's all kinds of movies that guy made that people don't pay attention to anymore, and they're awesome movies.
That car just happened to be a Porsche.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And so those cars are worth tons of money.
Right.
And very collectible. And the actual car was at Thermal, and his son Chad actually got to drive that car. So when Steve was making the movie in that race car, he got Chad to sit in his lap, and he drove a couple laps pre-filming with his son in the lap in the race car.
Yeah, right.
Well, the guy that owns that car let Chad drive the car on track
as an adult.
Right. With Chad's son.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Wow!
So how cool is that?
Neat, yeah, really neat. I think there used to be a more like romanticized or like not like more movie star like thing that went on with race car driving. I mean, James Dean was a race car driver. Paul Newman was a race car driver. Steve McQueen, obviously, a race car driver. You don't see that nowadays. You know what I mean? Where those guys is doing that stuff.
Which is a shame. It's it takes a lot of skill for one. So
yeah, it takes some time and some dedication.
Yeah,
to the
so
sport.
You can't just throw a bunch of cash at it, and it takes more than that.
Right.
It takes more than money to be fast driver.
Sure. All right. Our friend Dave asks, and I'm sure this is for laughs, but will there ever be a faster vehicle than the R-Weed 1 Ford Tempo?
Was that Dave Mundo? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave, I'll give you a shout out. I don't know. That car was ahead of its time. That 4-cylinder was fast. So, yeah, it's good stuff.
Right. Okay. And then our friend Stacy asks, how difficult is it to learn hand controls? What special training do you need to qualify as a hand control driver?
Excellent question. Well, I wouldn't say it was difficult for me in the beginning. I hadn't driven for 2 years, and if you dangle the carrot of driving after sitting for 2 years, it was difficult in a racing environment because I have one hand on the brake and gas, which I felt was the best way because that's how I drove on the street.
Sure.
And using my right hand to slip steer, that posed an incredible, difficult task because when you're turning, your hand has to slide around. It was tough to kind of drive fast with that setup. But when I went to the ring and the bar being on the other side, the ring changed the game. Like I would think, I could teach anybody really how to do it effectively.
Sure.
But the other way would be a harder learning curve.
Right.
The brake and gas on one side and driving with one hand.
I think
really tough.
Can't like get out of
you drove it like that.
Yeah,
on
right,
track.
Right.
So
I can't get out of my own skin as far as that goes. But like in my mind, when I first got my van and they had the hand controls in there and like I went out for some lessons as far as like how you're going to do this. Right, same thing. But I was determined there was no way that I was going to have a problem with this. I drove everything from an 18-wheel semi-truck to a Bobcat to dump trucks and everything else. I was going to drive this.
I will say, to answer Stacey's question, if you ever remember Clint Eastwood had that movie, that Firefox, where he had the helmet, he had to think in Russian.
Yes, right, right.
Because I don't use my legs, I feel like I think with my hands. So when I'm driving, or if I'm racing, like I'm thinking with my hands. So it comes maybe a little more natural to someone who's not using their legs.
Yeah, right.
Versus someone like my wife who tried to move the car into the garage once and rammed it in the back of the garage because she hit the gas, not the brake. Yep. She wanted to see if she could do it with her hands. She's thinking with her feet. We think with our hands.
Right.
So
right.
I think
and
it comes easy for us.
If somebody waved a magic wand and gave me my body back that was able, I don't think my brain could work it. I think it would take time to figure out how to walk again. Like I haven't even. How long have you been injured?
14 years.
I'm 16, and I don't even think. I still dream. Every dream I have that I remember is I'm walking in it. Like I don't dream I'm in a wheelchair, but I dream that I'm walking all the time. I even have one that's hilarious. That like I always dream that I'm in a wheelchair, but like I can get right out of it. And I always wake up going, why didn't I think of that earlier? Just get out of it. But I don't think, like, if I had complete function of my body, that I could walk without, like, I haven't thought about walking in so long.
Well, I've had people drive both my street car and my race car and try to use the hands, and there's a big disconnect there. They just
right.
It's what comes easy for us.
When something happens, though, you don't even think to, like, jam on the brakes with your foot at all. I don't even think that.
I don't reach for my like, in my feeling, I don't reach for my foot on the brake pedal.
No, right,
right. That doesn't.
None of that. But I don't even think to, like if something like if a rabbit runs out in front of me, I don't think to get my foot on that, then jam on the brakes. I'm jamming on the brakes with my hand. That's how I do it. So, right, it comes natural after a certain
absolutely.
Point.
So I hope that answers the question.
Right. I mean, it was a very good question. All right, so Jeffrey asks, can you smoke a cigar while racing, Rob?
I cannot.
What a bummer.
Yeah. It's thanks, Jeff, for your question.
Right. Are you a smoker?
If it's a Cuban cigar, maybe we can talk. But right. No, I'm wearing so I wear a cool shirt. Yeah. And then on top of that, I wear a Nomex long sleeve shirt, and then I wear my fire suit, and then I have a balaclava, which is like Nomex, and then I wear my helmet.
Right.
So full face.
Sure.
And I usually leave my shield up, unless it's super sunny. So I have a real, like, tinted shield. So there's quite a bit of
guard in front of your face.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, what's the octane of the fuel? You're 110?
I run 104.
104. Okay.
Right.
That's right. High octane stuff.
It's pretty high octane.
What were you saying that cost a gallon?
Oh, it's like 9 something.
Yeah, not cheap.
No.
Not putting it in. Now, do you ever put it in the street car and just drive around with it in there?
In the turbo, I run 100.
Oh, do you? Yeah. Now, is it better in the car?
It has to be tuned.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you just run the octane, I have a special computer that has, like, multiple programs. So
sure.
street, wink, wink, and then I have.
Yeah, right. That's right. I mean, it's a different animal. That's for sure. When I put the video up, I'll definitely put it up with some pictures of the car and a couple of videos if I can add them in there too. Maybe at the tail.
I think I got some new car I can show you.
Yeah. Send them along and I'll put them on there. But I thoroughly had a terrific day as far as the whole track went out there. Like the Ferris Bueller line. If you've got the means, I recommend it.
You got the drive on track, and then you got to see as a passenger.
Yep.
And learning the line or seeing the line, I think gives you a perspective that not just because you're in a chair, but just anybody, like, you drove and you rode.
Yeah, right.
And you got to see what a high level it takes to go fast.
It was super cool. I'm trying to think of anything else because a gazillion questions, and I don't often get anybody. I've never had anyone in yet that is in a chair, and every time I don't have I don't know about you, but I don't have very, very many friends in chairs.
I don't either.
No, I just don't even gravitate towards it. But when I see them, I'm always asking, like, so how you doing this and how you doing that? Because I want to get input as far as, like, there's got to be a better way or something like that to check something out. Anybody who's, I hope that some people that are in chairs catch the podcast and they listen to it. I hate when I see somebody lets it stop, lets them be stopped because of it. And there are certain, everyone's got their limitations, and I push the envelope constantly. I fall out of my chair once a month just doing something stupid.
I haven't fallen out in a while, but I've definitely fallen. I've fallen in public 3 times, and that sucks. Because I can't, and I'm sure you can as well, get back. I can't get back in by myself.
No, right.
It ain't happening.
I got no grip. I can't.
When I'm doing, like, I can vividly remember in therapy, like, we were out of the chair and we were, like, learning to get back, and I'm like, the therapist, like, you have your abs.
Yeah.
Like, you can move like in a way that I can't. They were.
Now, see, the thing that they told me held me up was the grip, because I wasn't able to actually.
Well, they're trying to say I wasn't strong enough, and I'm like, I could outbench you, like the 90-pound therapist.
Right.
So
now, with your injury, with mine, I was in a coma for 21 days, and I lost 38 pounds of muscle in that 21 days. Like, it was gone from me. when I woke up, my thought was, all right, the doctor said you'll probably never walk again. I'm like, well, so it seems to me that you should cut the legs off then. And he's like, no, we can't do that. And I'm like, well, I need to have less weight because then I can get around better and everything else. And like I was telling you before the podcast, when I was a young guy, I could walk upstairs on my hands, and all I thought to myself was, if I don't have the 30 or 40 pounds of legs, I could really just get around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally good. But they were like, no, you're going to need that for balance and everything else. And, obviously aesthetically, I'd rather have my legs now. But I was just trying to like spitball as to how I was going to get this done. But you weren't in a coma for a long time.
I wasn't. I was in ICU for like 6 days. And then I did first step down. And then second step down was like they're acute. So where I was hurt, it was a spinal cord and like head injury wing.
Right.
And once I got out of ICU, I kind of they kind of talked to me and explained to me what was going on and that I was never going to walk. And it wasn't the surgeon, it was like the assistant surgeon who told me. So I gave him some choice words and, you can't tell somebody that right out of the gate, but they want to be as honest as possible.
Sure.
And, I started the research phase of when I could start...
like looking into stem cells.
Like, well, not so much that. Like, what am I... Like, okay, I'm hurt here. Like, is there any chance will I walk? Like, I need to know something.
Yeah, right.
And they told me, it's statistically within the first 2 years you might have a chance. So I said, okay.
Yeah.
I told myself I'm going to work as hard as I possibly can.
Absolutely.
And if I don't walk, then at least I can look back at my life and say I worked as hard as I could.
Sure.
So the therapist who was in charge at the hospital I was at for rehab, she told me I was too positive. Not kidding.
Nice.
And they'd never really dealt with anyone like me.
Yeah.
And I knew my injury. I wasn't naive. A high cervical break is, most people aren't walking. I get it. But
yeah.
I did absolutely everything I possibly could. And
sure.
And
it's a physical thing because there's these people that say stuff like, if you would have worked harder or tried it, that's not that. Because I was the same way. I couldn't wait to get to therapy and all that other stuff and try all that stuff. And there was a guy that I was at the Rehab Institute of Chicago with. There was 28 people on the floor, spinal cord floor, and this guy did nothing but cry all day. And in the 3 months that he was at the hospital there, his swelling was going down, so he was getting stuff back. I swear, every time I'm in and I wish the guy all the best in the world. I think he's a colossal pussy, but I wish him all the best.
And he got plenty of return.
He did. Every time I turned around, the guy's like, I can move my foot. And I'm like, oh, you son of a bitch. Well, all right.
I was in the best shape of I was 235 pounds. And, I could pass the NFL combine as probably an outside linebacker and a safety. I was in the best shape I could be. And that helps save my life. All that muscle mass, I lost about 35 pounds in the first 3 weeks. And I couldn't wheel from here to the door in the beginning. But I had all this mass, and that helped me, survive in the beginning. Because it's just so weak.
Sure.
My hands didn't work. In the beginning, they slowly came back. And, I was just hoping for a little twitch or something.
Yeah, right.
Damn it,
Right.
It's...
I mean, we're reminiscing about it now, but I don't think you do, and I don't think about it at all anymore.
I don't think about crashing. I don't think about the surgery. Actually, before I went under, the surgeon and I cracked a little joke, and him and I have been good friends ever since. Because it was out of my hands at that point.
Yeah, right.
But, to tell me I was too positive was like, that's
what else can I be?
That's not going to get you to walk, but it points you in the right direction. Yeah, my life is not perfect by any means. And, I never dreamt from when I got hurt to now that half the stuff was even going to be possible in my life.
Sure.
I've been very fortunate, and driving is a nice escape. But there's that's just one part of my life, and the chair, it sucks, but I'm independent.
I look at it as a situation that I don't let it ever stop me from doing something, but I feel like a guy like you and a guy like me can achieve more than somebody else can. Like you can't do more for your kids than I do, because you know what? I do everything I do for my kids, and I do it from here.
Right.
So like everything that I get done, I do it from here. I've had people that get that they don't like me or whatever like that, and they try and use it against me. I had a guy that wanted to fight me the one time, and I'm like, really? You want to fight? And he wanted to fight. And he was a little fucking short guy, and the guys at the wrestling club will remember this. And it was funny and everything else, but I'm like looking at the guy like thinking, he's a shit bigger than you, but this way you want to challenge a guy that's a quadriplegic to a fight. I thought to myself, I think that I would have thought, like, 'cause I couldn't have beat him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're an able-bodied guy. You kick my ass. But I thought to myself, like, man, what kind of person would it take to actually make that challenge? Like, holy shit, you just said that. And, it just, I didn't feel bad about it. I didn't feel anything about it. I just thought, like, hey, man, I don't know what to tell you. I'm probably not going to fight you. I'll bite your ankles, whatever. But, it's never been a thing that I always looked at it like, when people look back at my life, they'll be like, that dude had all this go wrong, and he still managed to do what he did.
It's definitely, an uphill battle for for going to the bathroom, not sweating. I've been fortunate that I've rarely had UTIs. I mean, you probably,
no.
I mean,
in the very beginning, I had like some kidney stones and stuff like that, and I had some UTIs, but otherwise, no. I've been good to go.
So I have no skin problems.
Nope,
early on, when I didn't realize I was kind of laying in the same spot, but I've been in the emergency room twice, okay? And one was super serious. Like my blood pressure is through the roof.
Yeah,
and like,
autonomic dysreflexia.
Yeah, dysreflexia is brutal. And the reason I bring this up is I was laying in the emergency room, and the doctor had come in, and he looked at the machine, and it was like the blood pressure was like 150 over something, and it was like the patient before me. Well, I wasn't hooked up to it.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, that's okay." Like, dude,
like, no.
150 for a spinal cord is like, you're going to have a stroke.
Yeah, right.
I'm usually like 80 over 60. I'm like a Kenyan runner.
Super low.
Yeah,
right, super low.
So I found that most people don't know anything about spinal cord.
Nope.
And they don't realize.
I used to carry a card in my wallet or in my
I used
bag.
to. In the beginning, they gave me one. Yep. Now I'm like, so I just remember being in an emergency room. Like, this doctor, he maybe is a good doctor, doesn't understand about spinal cord.
Right.
So that's over all the years. Like, you learn just how to adapt and move on with life. But if people knew, like, the burden you have to shoulder to be every day.
Yep, it's every day. I mean, like I have to tell my boys, I go, hey, I wake up every single morning and it's a wrestling match to get dressed. I mean, I got no torso control. I'm paralyzed from my high chest down, getting pants on when you're rolling around, and I have hardly any hand function. So everything's hooking.
Yeah, my hands work a whole lot.
Rolling back and forth, trying to get this situation together. So like every morning it's a thing. Now it's my thing. So it's the new normal.
You need to get some fiber. That's the problem.
Fiber, right?
Get you back on Wheaties.
Right. No, well, I'm every other day Raisin Bran guy or something like that. But yeah. So I mean, like, there's just things that people don't realize that's what's going on.
Well, so I talk about race day. So so a race day, I eat at a certain time, I drink fluids at a certain time, and I try and save my shoulders as best I can. So I have to limit the transfers.
Right.
So when I get at the track, I have to go to driver's meeting. There's 2 transfers. Yeah. I'm out.
Now, so what we're talking about, like, okay, your hips are made for you to walk on. Your shoulders are not. So repetitive motion of this constant pushing and everything else is bad for your shoulders as far as it goes. And if a guy that's in a wheelchair ends up with a shoulder replacement, you're FUBAR, man, you're fucked.
I don't want to even think about
No,
that.
me neither.
Like, just break a finger, or you can't use your
Right,
hand. We
right.
can't push wheelchair.
Yeah, right. So you're done. I mean, if I had a shoulder that was tore up, I would be completely dependent on somebody else to help me get from the chair to the bed.
As would I.
Yeah, the shower, everything would be a pain. Like, oh my God, I might as well find a new best friend because you're going to see me naked every day. So not going to be fun. But so yeah, you try and minimize the amount of times that you're transferring.
Because on race day, I need my shoulders. It's
Right.
as you know, we did half of what a race was, and you just rode along. So it's very intense on my shoulders, the braking and the turning. So I have to take fluids in at a certain time, because if I have to cath at a certain time,
Yep.
so when I'm in the car, I don't go in dysreflexia.
Yeah, right.
Because
Right.
I mean, if you don't
Add the
cath,
heat and that would be beyond right.
So I've learned over the years like how to time everything, and I know at this time I need to drink this much, I need to eat this much, and for the most part I get things figured out for race day.
Right.
It's just
right.
nothing for the nerves. The
Yeah,
nerves are just
right.
there.
I don't want to talk too much about the wheelchair stuff, but I want to people to understand there's so much more to what you're doing than a guy that's just practicing and hopping in a car. Like, because you've got to plan your entire day out. Same thing for me. You know, I'm going to a wrestling tournament, and I've told my son this. We were in Ohio for a national tournament, and he had pneumonia. And some people think I'm a dick or whatever, but he understood what I was saying to him. I looked down and I go, hey, nobody cares that you're sick. It doesn't matter. Today is the day that we're here. You're competing. Stop thinking about being sick. No one's ever going to hold you for losing a match. They're going to be just fine. But today's competition day, so it doesn't matter that you're sick. You go out there and you go, and that's how you do. And he understood. He's like, "Yep, I know." He goes, I can't. No, they're not going to change the day of the tournament because I don't feel good." Same thing with you. Race day's race day, man. You better be ready for it.
Yeah, it's a lot going on physically, and I gotta
essentially
be
you're
100%.
always sick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you can't. This is the condition of my life right now.
And I try to maximize on race day, you know, with a appropriate amount of rest for my shoulders, because I know I'm gonna.
Sure.
And after a race, I feel pretty good, and then that next couple of days, I'm down for the count. It's like running I don't know, maybe equivalent of like a half marathon. It sucks that much out of me.
Right.
And I'm gonna do it till I can't do it. When I get to a point where I feel like I'm not safe.
Yeah.
You know, that was one thing I really stressed to myself was, it's one thing to go around and make laps, and it's another thing to be out there with other cars and be responsible for others.
Sure.
And I always felt, if I'm going to be out there, I need to be safe.
Yeah, right.
And I don't think
right.
anyone has ever, who's raced against me, has been like, you know what, he's
not safe.
He's a liability.
Right.
And, you know, with my hands, I always felt like I held myself to a higher standard of trying to drive safe.
Sure. I don't think that there's so I'm hard for people to impress me. You know what I mean? It's difficult to impress me, but I'm, straight up thoroughly impressed with like the times I've been out there at the track with what you're doing, knowing the insides and outs of what goes with what you're doing. It's thoroughly impressive. I mean, I'm sure there's people that are impressed with some other guy that's out there at the track driving, but like I said, if you're looking at Robb out on the track doing what he's doing, and you're not like, holy shit, man, like that's pretty damn cool. You're not paying attention because you don't understand exactly what he's doing.
Kester, my driving coach, he gets it.
Yeah.
And, the guys I race against, the great part is they just treat me like Robb. And I couldn't ask for more. I don't want to be,
right.
A different standard. I'm just a racer in their eyes.
Sure.
I couldn't ask for more.
Right. Well, it's been a good podcast, man.
Yeah.
I like when I run into somebody who has somebody else that they know that's in a similar situation, and then they can gauge it between me and that guy, and they're like, dude, wow, I don't miss a wrestling tournament ever. Like, I don't care if it's in a blizzard, I'm going. So, yeah, you don't let it stop you, and it's super cool. Anytime you got something going on that you want to come talk about it, man, come talk
I appreciate
about
you having me, Bill. It's been
fun.
a unique opportunity, and hopefully someone's out there who listen.
Right.
Or will listen, and they're inspired to try and do something.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody's listening and they know somebody in a chair, pass this on to them, because I think that, they need some inspiration, or they need a little, nudge to get themselves out the door to do, then go do. And, I always tag it off with, please subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're watching on YouTube. I don't do this for any money. I just like to see some subscribers and stuff like that. And then
it was not paid.
No,
there was no fee.
There's no there's no sponsors.
Where's my agent?
Right,
Come on,
the shocks that you talked about, they didn't give us any money.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a real estate broker, so I fund all this by selling houses and property and stuff like that. So, check out the podcast on Apple or the iTunes Store or Google Play. Rate us. Let me know on social media. I'll pretty much connect with anybody on there. If you're checking out the podcast, I'd like to hear from you, and hope you learned something. Put some comments on the thing, and I'll try and answer them. But thanks for coming, man.
Thanks, Bill.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right.